Yeah,
Everybody
for sure.
has limits, and micro-tuning through no code or very low code kind of approach lets you go beyond those limits of all the other, most of the other vendors out there. And again, it's what allows you to capture that last 5% of productivity.
What do you mean by micro-tuning?
Oh, that's a great question. I mean, I'll start. You can really say what it is, but to me, micro-tuning means that we have the ability, we have the philosophy of allowing you to make the most granular changes to how the application maps to your operation, and so that it reduces the number of steps, keystrokes, everything that happens down at a level that doesn't appear significant on its own, but if you capture all of that, it makes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6% difference in productivity.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a couple elements there. One, let's just take the user interface as a good example, where you have RF units, mobile devices down there, or tablets. We actually had a customer come to us and said, hey, we have a very, our picking is such that we are asking the person to grab a particular garment, and we want to verify that with an image, and the flow of that is very precise to their operation, because garments, on hangers, and pulling that and making sure that they have the right thing without necessarily having to scan everything, or they can do scan. So, I mean, that is an example where that was a very particular use case that was needed to be exactly the way the customer wanted. In a lot of cases, if you just have a standard way of approaching RF, mobile apps, your app is your app, right? In our case, where our mobile app is more of a configuration, right? You can say, okay, I can add that, I can have that image show up, and that comes in from an S3 storage someplace on the web, and then we can show it, and then they can decide if they're just going to press a button to say okay, or if they ask for a scan. Those are all configurations. So I think that level, that's a really good example of optimizing that flow, that one little picking flow, to that operation. Any other things that would have to happen there might cause an additional step of QA or whatever to validate the garment, etc. So that's a good example. I mean, the system is fraught with other examples like that, just pulling out a keystroke where you don't want to have a keystroke, or an extra scan where you don't need an extra scan, and those sorts of things. And think about every one of those things is at least a second of someone's time, 2 seconds usually. And I think that those kinds of things are important in the operation. Again, this is where we get ROI leaks, right? You get all those things are little ROI leaks if you don't attend to them. And some of them big, some of them small, but the small ones over 1,000 times a day, equals, real live time. So I think that the advantage, that we have to do that really works to minimizing those ROI leaks over the hull of a system. And if you think about like a WMS, as I always say, it's sort of competing little microflows, operational microflows in a business, right? I've always thought about it that way. And if you then say, okay, let's tune each one of those, tune the receiving, let's tune the put away, let's tune even cycle counting, let's tune the picking, the outbound processes. If you can tune each one of those little things, right, that equals real ROI, right? And so stop the ROI leaks. Again, get additive ROI by making the processes really flow really well. So it goes beyond just the user interface. It comes down to the overall process flow, maybe the material handling side of things. Do you have to scan to pull something off the conveyor? Do those kinds of things are all pieces to that puzzle that then equal minimizing, the ROI leak, maximizing your ROI for the system.
Yeah, you said something I want to pick up on there, which is a WMS system is like a collection of competing microflows. I mean, in so many ways, a WMS is it's a infinite number of like workflows and rules, right? It's really what it is, and that has been collected and organized over time into a WMS, and it does have, look, I can have all these different types of receiving, I can have all these different types of putaways, I can have all these different types of product attributes, and it is super configurable, but it has its limits.
Yeah,
Everybody
for sure.
has limits, and micro-tuning through no code or very low code kind of approach lets you go beyond those limits of all the other, most of the other vendors out there. And again, it's what allows you to capture that last 5% of productivity. Right. And that's important. That's a big deal for big operations.
Yeah, for sure.
So thinking about a WMS as a multi-decade investment, right? How do you create, and you guys did this already, right? Many of your systems that you implemented are still in use today. Some of the code you wrote is still in use today.
Yeah.
Some of the code you wrote in the mid-90s, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is still in use today. From a product platform philosophy, describe that from the standpoint of, thinking about a 20-year investment.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it from a little bit of a business philosophy to start with, or an operational philosophy, here's what we subscribe to. Nobody's going to want to have upgrades or new things just thrust upon them. It's just not the way operations want to be inflicted. Yeah, they're going to say, no, I want to upgrade when I want to upgrade. And the way most people think about an upgrade is kind of a big bang thing. So, okay, I'm going to upgrade. It's going to be a huge undertaking. Our philosophy is more surgical than that, a little more fine-tuned, in that we understand, especially with some of the aspects we've talked about, like micro-tuning and creating these specific workflows for an operation. Most of them are configurations. Some of them may be, kind of small delta changes that are custom to a customer, captured in a very small customer library, that you need to be able to collect all of that and move it forward to an upgraded instance automatically, essentially automatically. It doesn't negate having to test and revalidate a solution, because you will do that no matter what you. But we leave that up to our customers on when they want to do that. They want to do that every year. They want to do that every 2 years, every 3 years. It really will be.
Or looking for an opportunistic point, like bringing on a new customer, right? Yeah. That's often there's like a driver that allows you, but it's important to have the distinction to say, I want to make that, me as the customer want to make the call of when I want to take on that effort, because it's validation, right? It's not like it isn't still effort, but it's in a lot of cases, it's a validation is involving various groups to make sure that the flows are still the way you want them to be, and anything new that came along, is still in line with optimized microflows. Right?
Yep. So I think we see it really. It's really our job as a software vendor to protect your investment and your path to the future. It's your job as a customer, as an operations team, to decide when you want to take advantage of that. Right. So the way that happens is, we release our product on a regular schedule. We don't inflict that on a customer, but we make it available when, their time, their operation, their new client, whatever it is, makes sense for them to take it. And then we make it as painless as possible to go from here I am to I have a new instance to test, to go through UAT, validate, and then take live. That process is, like I said, pretty automatic, essentially automatic.
Yeah. Well, I think that, too, what's happened, if you think about the original architecture that we built, was a bit like that, where we wanted to, allow people that flexibility. But what happens, when it gets, taken on through acquisitions and has its own life after that, companies have less appetite for that, and they want, to homogenize, their world, so that like everything is the same. And so because they can scale their business more or whatever. So sometimes I think a lot of that, effort to homogenize everything isn't for the sake of the customer. It's just for the sake of the selling organization scaling their business. And so the driver really is not, in my opinion, is not in the right place, right? The driver should be in what's the customer need, what's the best for the customer, not just because you want to scale your business, because you can scale it better by creating a homogeneous sort of platform that doesn't allow people to move very much, right? And so I think that's the dilemma that people have had. And I think that some of the new things that we're doing around the configurability of those microflows, through configuration, no code sort of situation gives you a little bit of the best of both worlds there. And then, minimizing, down the things that go in that library and allow you to move it forward at your, not to say leisure, at, whatever works for you from a business perspective, a new customer coming on, a new building coming online, right? Some kind of other driver, or just an event like, you've got some kind of upgrades that you're doing in your ERP that you'd like to follow on. So it allows you to get that stuff sorted. But I think it's interesting to see, that variation of philosophy, out there in the vendors. And I don't think it's always about the customer. I think it's often about scaling the software business. So I think that's a difference.
It's very true. And I suppose the other thing that we should mention is that as far as future-proofing and protecting customers' investment, we try to do a lot of additional pieces as sidecars, or you call them sidecars, which is I'm disconnected from the actual release cycle, so I can give you, like the configurator utility is not attached directly to any release, so it can continue to grow and change and evolve more rapidly. And as a customer, you can take advantage of that.
Yeah, our Elastic Communicator is the same way. A lot of our tech pieces are independent of the actual underlying software release, so you can maneuver them much more quickly as you want to take on new things. And so that'll stay. That'll be a core part of the way we operate, because it allows us an extra bit of flexibility for our customers, right? To say, I'd like to take that thing on and use it because that adds value. It doesn't need to be tied in. I mean, back in the day, right, if you think about if you think about like that previous product we developed, we tried to put everything in the WMS. We tried to shove everything, the integration stuff, everything was in there because we felt like it just had to be in there for whatever reason. But now our approach is much different. Some of the things that are much more variable tend to be externalized, so that we don't have to you don't have to do an upgrade to get the new thing necessarily, if they're properly externalized. So I think that's one of the core things that we've been working on. The configurator, some of the communication stuff that we're working on, the automation integration stuff that we're working on, all are operating sort of externally to the main WMS product release, so that we can take those on separately and add value without having to do big upgrades, which is different, I think, than most of the other vendors, because I think, it's like a big ball that you got to just take, right? And we've divvied that out a bit.
Yeah, very true. Very true. We take firm responsibility, and we know it's our obligation to create more value and make those pieces available to our customers, our partners, as quickly as we can. And it's their decision on when they take them and how they leverage them.
Yeah.
Are we ready? Yeah, we have an early prediction for the Packers season.
Okay. Early prediction?
12 wins, over or under. How about that?
I'll say 11. I'm going to say under. It's going to be a tough division. I'll say 11
Yeah,
wins.
I think the NFC North is going to be the division this year. Think about it. Chicago, right, which could actually not be normal in Chicago. It could be not normal Bears.
35 quarterbacks, this is the one?
Yeah, I think it could be, though. And then you have the Lions, right, and you have the Packers. And I think that the Vikings really did a good job in their draft. I mean, I'm not sold on the quarterback, but I think that they got a lot of good pieces. So I think that they're in a difficult division. So I'm going to say under. I'm going to say 10 or 11 in as a wild card.
All right, there you go. On the record.
We're on the record.
We'll revisit that this December.
Yeah. Wait a second. Hold on. Are you still recording? Okay, let's
Yeah,
hear it from
what's your
yours.
Eagles?
Yeah.
It's one of the few seasons where it could be 2-15 or they could be 15-2. I don't know. Nobody knows what happened when they went 10-1 and then had the biggest
Crashed and
collapse,
burned.
yeah, in the history of their franchise. There's nothing like it. So nobody knows what happened.